welcome to my company analysis. And today I will be covering the Indianapolis Colts. So, the origin story of the Indianapolis Colts is one that dates back to the 1970s. In the early 1970s, Carroll Rosenblum, who is pictured to your left, was the owner of the Baltimore Colts and had been searching for ways to move his franchise out of Baltimore. And even though the Colts had just recently defeated the Dallas Cowboys in Super Bowl V, Rosenblum felt as though the citizens of Baltimore did not really appreciate the team. And these concerns mainly stemmed from fan attendance rates, which he deemed less than average for a team that, like I said, just won the Super Bowl. So Rosenblum began searching for potential new landing spots for his franchise, and he was actually met with strong resistance from not only Colts fans but NFL team owners as well as Commissioner Pete Rozelle. So instead of relocating to Tampa or Columbia, Maryland, like he originally planned, he continued searching for other avenues that would lead him out of Baltimore. So, while Rosenblum was scrambling for solutions, sadness struck Los Angeles when the owner of the Rams, Dan Reeves, passed away. Pictured to your left is Reeves, and he originally bought the Cleveland Rams in 1941, and 4 years later he moved them to Los Angeles. And shortly after his death, his estate deemed it necessary to sell the franchise. And after the 1971 NFL season, the Rams were officially listed as for sale. Hugh Culverhouse, who is at the top right hand corner of the screen, was an American attorney and businessman, and he first entered a bid of $17 million for the Rams, but was outbid at the last minute by Robert Ursay, who bid a record $19 million. Reeves had claimed that Culverhouse had claimed that he and the Reeves estate had actually already had a handshake agreement to purchase the Rams, but this claim would be eventually settled between the NFL and Culverhouse. And after this occurred, Robert Ursay's purchase was official. And interestingly enough, Ursay was fascinated with the Baltimore Colts quarterback Johnny Unitas. So once again, we enter Carroll Rosenblum. So as fate struck, they were actually able to work out a trade where Rosenblum received ownership of the Los Angeles Rams and Ursay obtained ownership of the Baltimore Colts. The swap officially took place July 13th, 1972, and all contracts and personnel remained intact for both franchises. So, as Ursay implemented his desires within the Baltimore Colts, the team's on field performance really took a downward spiral compared to the success that Rosenblum had enjoyed. So, fast forward to 1983, and the Colts had the first overall pick in the upcoming NFL draft, where the number one touted prospect was a kid named John Elway. And Ursay and the Colts were all in on Elway and felt as though he would really be the team's savior. But unfortunately, Elway did not feel the same, mainly due to the team's recent performance and organizational culture concerns. So, although the Colts knew Elway felt this way, they still ended up drafting him first overall. But Elway stood his ground and did not report to the team. And he eventually would threaten to go play professional baseball for the New York Yankees because he was drafted in the 1981 MLB draft 52nd overall by the Yankees. So, with this in mind, the Colts ended up trading him to the Denver Broncos, which certainly left a bad taste in Robert Ursay's mouth. So, in an attempt to further increase the franchise attractiveness, Ursay asked the city of Baltimore to fund improvements to the Colts home field, which was back then Memorial Stadium. So, as these negotiations kind of stalled during the 1983 and 84 NFL season, Ursay began visiting cities that he could potentially relocate the Colts to. So he visited Jacksonville, Indianapolis, Phoenix, Memphis, and Oakland. And although these visits, garnered significant media attention, Ursay continuously claimed that he had no intention of moving the team. So, after his visit to Phoenix, Irsay met with the commissioner, Pete Rozelle, in order to seek the league and team's owners' approval for a franchise relocation. And during this meeting, the NFL made it quickly clear that this was not a league-wide issue, so that pretty much gave Irsay the green light to do as he pleased. So originally, um, Irsay was planning to move the Colts to Phoenix, but the deal fell through, and Jacksonville was also a viable option, but it was not big enough for Irsay's standards. Memphis and Oakland were also very attractive to Irsay because of the size of the markets, but they also had underlying stadium issues similar to those in Baltimore. So, in February of 1984, Irsay had actually visited the newly constructed Hoosier Dome in Indianapolis, which at the time was really a state of the art complex. And after this trip, and unbeknown to the public, Irsay had made his decision privately to move the Colts to Indianapolis, but in order to do so, he had to quite literally sneak out of Baltimore. So, due to the fact that the stadium negotiations with the city turned sour quickly, on March 27th, the Maryland state legislature passed a what is called provision of eminent domain, which would have legally bonded the Colts to the city of Baltimore. And this motion would have effectively stripped Robert Irsay of his ownership, and all the city needed was the governor's signature to make this official. So as soon as this news made it to Irsay, he sprung to action, and around noon on March 28th, Irsay abruptly made the executive decision to start the process of relocating the team to Indianapolis. Irsay called up Mayflower Transit Company and ordered a fleet of moving trucks, and around 9 o'clock that night, the Mayflower semis began to arrive, and the majority of the team's belongings were packed up and moved to Indianapolis during the middle of the night in a blizzard. So, this was interesting because the team had told the Mayflower Company that they needed to take a less than ideal traveling route to get to Indianapolis because Irsay feared that the city of Baltimore would send state troopers and have the semis pulled over and compounded the Colts' belongings. But this was an understandable concern for Irsay because shortly after the move to Indianapolis, the mayor of Baltimore, along with the city council, sued to condemn the Colts, but ended up losing this battle in court. So, over the next decade, Robert Irsay's health significantly diminished. Prior to his stroke on November 29th, 1995, Robert had turned the majority of the Colts' day-to-day operations and player negotiations over to his son Jim. And as the acting general manager and chief operating officer, Jim Irsay attended owners' meetings in place of his ailing father. And then when Robert did pass on January 15th, 1997, his son Jim officially inherited ownership of the team, and at age 37, he became the league's youngest franchise owner. So after reflecting on the Colts' storied past, it would be appropriate to kind of reflect on the current organizational structure. Overall, the business is vertically structured, which means that each employee has clearly defined roles and responsibilities. As of now, Jim Irsay is still the acting owner and CEO of the franchise, and he really has a wide range of responsibilities, but ultimately, for all decisions, the buck stops with him. And then Jim's daughters, Carly, Casey, and Kaylin. Kaylin is to your right hand side. Carly is next to her, and then Casey is on the left hand side with Jim in the middle. And so Jim's daughters, Carly, Casey, and Kaylin, are all vice chairmen of the board as well as co owners. And since 2004, Carly Irsay has acted as the Colts representative for the NFL owners meetings, but it wasn't until 2008 when she officially was hired by the Colts. And in 2014, Carly was in charge of her father's CEO responsibilities because Jim had to step away from his role for personal reasons. And then in 2016, Carly was elected by the NFL and current commissioner Roger Goodell to be the only sitting female on the league's digital media committee. And for said committee, Carly is primarily responsible for implementing strategies and creating policies for digitally based activations across the NFL as well as individual teams. And then Jim's daughter Casey joined the Colts in 2007 and since then has specialized in community relations and marketing while also attending the NFL owners' meetings with her two sisters. And the final daughter, Caitlin, began working for the Colts in 2010, and on a day to day basis, she works with corporate sales and the numerous community outreach programs that the team has. And more specifically, she's the president of the Colts women's organization as well as an acting member on the league's employee benefit committee. Then on this committee, she is tasked with overseeing team and overall benefit plans, which includes league administering employee eligibility concerns, benefit and administrative expense payouts, and general plan design and revisions. So next in line of command is General Manager Chris Ballard, who is pictured um, the bottom left-hand corner. And Chris was initially hired in 2017, and in short, Chris is concerned with all things team related, which includes, but is not limited to, things like hiring coaches, roster cuts, contract negotiation, draft decisions, and free agency signings. So, another key part of the organization is Pete Ward, who is pictured down to the bottom right hand corner. Pete is the chief legal officer of the Colts, and he has been working with the team ever since he started interning with them out of college. So, per the Indianapolis Colts official website, the mission of the franchise is to entertain, inspire, and unite by winning the right way. Our team is committed to improving the lives of our fellow Hoosiers by building a healthy, inclusive, and compassionate community through meaningful outreach projects and partnerships. So, the organizational goals are really in line with the vision of Jim Irsay, who has always prioritized success on the football field, while really also emphasizing significant community outreach and impact. And and one noteworthy goal that Irsay recently stated was that we're going to get the horseshoe to at least two Lombardis this decade. So the most significant service that the Indianapolis Colts provide is live gridiron football and corporate sponsorships. Products that the franchise monetizes includes team licensed merchandise as well as food and beverages that are offered during game days. Due to the fact that the organization's financial records are not made public, one can only speculate on general market performance. With that said, it can be assumed that the Colts did not make money last year because of the COVID pandemic, but according to Forbes, the value of the franchise increased over 10%, even though revenue decreased by over $75 million. And in addition, the team's operating income fluctuated from a positive 66 million in 2019 to a negative 20 million in 2020. Nevertheless, the Colts were one of the teams fortunate enough to have some fans in the stands during home games, which obviously helped them sell more tickets and food and beverages, and of course merchandise as well. Um, so, although game day revenue took a significant hit, the team continued to sell licensed goods online and still collected their fair share of revenue from the league's media contracts. So, all in all, coming out of the last physical year, the Colts organization was in a much better, favorable financial position compared to many other teams in the league. So, according to Forbes, the Indianapolis Colts franchise is valued at 3.25 billion, which ranks 19th out of 32 other clubs. And with a metro area population of around 2.1 million people, I believe, the Colts exist within a relatively small market compared to teams like the Raiders or the Rams. As far as strengths of the organization are concerned, the home of the Colts and the NFL Combine, Lucas Oil Stadium, consistently ranks as one of the top stadiums in the NFL due to the location, tailgating ability, as well as the retractable roof and window. So, furthermore, in a survey of NFL agents, Colts general manager Chris Ballard was selected as the league's best GM, as well as talent evaluator. And due to this, ability, due to Ballard's managerial capabilities, the on-field product has steadily improved each year since his arrival. And then, on the other hand, there are areas where the franchise struggles. According to Statistica, as of November 2019, the Colts' combined social media following was 3.9 million, which ranked 24 out of 32 teams. And so far in the current season, the Colts' home game attendance rates rank 24th out of 32 teams, even though the team's average ticket price is below the league average. So, moving on to opportunities, the Colts have a very established fan base, especially in central Indiana, which has been bolstered over the last 3 decades due to the team's performance and most notably quarterback play. And during this time, both local and national brand awareness has increased because of more media attention surrounding key players. And as technology continues to evolve, brand exposure opportunities are increasing, which makes it easier for small market teams like the Colts to ramp up digital consumer contact. And another possible opportunity for the team would to be increasing publicity to like international markets that do not have NFL teams, such as Canada and London. Um, another or moving on to the typical threats that the Colts face. These threats include other forms of entertainment that are readily available to consumers. The Indianapolis Indians, Pacers, and Fuel, and activities like Top Golf are all viable options to consumers when it comes to sport entertainment access. And additional external threat is the ever evolving and oftentimes polarizing rule changes that are impacting how the game of football is being played. And then you can also look at streaming options that are causing more and more fans to simply enjoy games from a variety of different preferred locations. And it should be noted that this shift towards political correctness has turned some fans away from the NFL as well. As far as current events are concerned, the Colts are active within the community year round. During the NFL season, the Colts host a variety of events and activities such as Touchdown Town, Colts in Motion, Colts 5K, kickoff concerts, watch parties, and of course, training camp. And current and former players are involved with many events such as Community Mondays, Breaking Barriers, My Cause, My Cleats, Crucial Catch, and Salute to Service, just to name a few. And many of these players have also started their own foundations, which the Colts happily support and supplement. So, based on the previous findings, it can be said that the Indianapolis Colts are a financially stable, community based organization that prioritizes community engagement and development. With that said, the owner still prioritizes winning, which is evident from the Colts' above average historical performance on the football field. And based on past employee sentiments and high levels of satisfaction, it is evident that the Colts have a winning workplace culture which is both inclusive and family oriented. And that concludes my report on the Indianapolis Colts.